context, you are a 19-year-old college dropout and a single mom living with your 3-year-old child. You raise the child alone, and you have cut contacts with your family. You must work to support yourself, but with little education and high expenses, your options are limited. You have enough funds to go to summer school, but you will have to cut expenses on your child. You have studied around medicine and have the skill to become a doctor. Your other option is prostitution. This house would prefer to work as a prostitute. First on the affirming team, we have Kaiden Chan. We've cut ties and connections with every single other family member that we have. We're alone. The one constant in our life now is our child. And it is our responsibility to take care of that child by any means necessary. It is not their fault. They can't be punished because of what we've done in the past. This is not an option. Just because we haven't been successful in life so far doesn't mean that our child must starve, must not have education, and must not have vital essentials to life. This is why on the affirming team, we firmly believe that prostitution would be a preferred option of work for 3 reasons today. First, we must do anything and everything we can for our children. My second substantive, this prostitution work can help us become a doctor in the future by giving us enough funding to possibly go to school and seek further education. 3. There is nothing wrong with prostitution. I start with my first substantive. Under this substantive point, we have the fact that you have a moral obligation to look after your child, and it's not your child shouldn't be punished, and your child's health is at risk when you don't have a job. We start with the first point of the substantive. It's your responsibility. This is pretty obvious. Every parent has a responsibility to look after their child. If you don't have a job, you can't give them you don't have proper financing. How are you going to be able to pay for food? How are you going to be able to pay for water, for shelter, for clothing? These are all things that require money. And being a prostitute means that you can get these every single night. You're going to be able to feed your child and know that she's living well enough to not die. The second point under my first substantive is that your child shouldn't be punished for this. Just because you're a college dropout doesn't mean that your child has to face the consequences of your actions. Your child is innocent. They must be given a fair chance. They are your own blood and flesh. This is why on the affirming team we much prefer prostitution, as it will give us the funding we need to be able to look after our child and give it a fair chance at its life, so that hopefully that our child might not have the same outcome as we have. My third point under this substantive is that your child's health is critically at risk when you don't have a job. When you walk down Queen Street, you always see homeless people. But have you ever thought, what about their children? This is something here on the affirming team that we simply cannot ignore. The fact is, when you don't have money, you can't go to the doctors. You can't go to the hospital. You can't purchase medicine. If your child gets sick, you don't have anything to feed them without money. This is why we believe prostitution is something that must be considered. It is simply because It's something that anyone can do. You don't need to go to school to be a prostitute. You don't need to do anything in particular to be a prostitute. This is an easy and guaranteed viable source of income. And it means that your child will not have to risk being sick or risk its own life because of your actions. We must do everything to protect our children. They're the only thing in our lives now. Moving on to my second substantive point. Although prostitution might not be a completely ideal job, and we do recognize on the affirming team that becoming a doctor would be much better. It provides more money and a much more stable income. But the fact is, from the context, we know that being a doctor just isn't possible. We have the skill, but we don't have the financial gain. The work of prostitution can help us get there. We can use government benefits to pay for our child to some extent, but we know these not to be enough. But if we look at it logistically, some of the expenses, or at least maybe 60% of all the money that you get your child requires money, and the government funding can only provide 60% of that money. There's still 40%. But if you get a job as a prostitute, you can earn up to $500 an hour. This means you'll be able to pay for your children, pay for yourself, and possibly even have money on the side that you can save in a bank that will grow money for you, and eventually, when you're ready, you can send yourself to school and become a doctor, where you can have a full degree and get a proper profession, a profession that has a viable source of income. This prostitution act and career is only a small step in being able to protect our children and ourselves from poverty. The underlying fact is, what else are you going to do? This is all you have done is studied around medicine during summer school. You can't get another type of job because you don't know how to operate in them. Prostitution is something that everyone can do, and the affirming team stresses this point, and it must be taken into consideration. The third substantive point I would like to bring up today is there's absolutely nothing wrong with prostitution. We prefer it because everyone can do it. Here in New Zealand, in 2003, prostitution was decriminalized, which means other than someone's moral beliefs, prostitution is completely allowed. And as long as it's allowed, it should be something that should be considered, if not even preferred. The fact is, it can make a lot of money. There are many horny people out there who will be willing to give you a quick shag for a few $100s. This is an underlying and indisputable fact. This money will easily be able to go into your child's education, your child's food, water, clothes, and whatever essentials is needed for human life. It may not be the best job, but the fact is, this is all we've got. And we must be prepared to do anything for our child, because they are brought into the world as innocent, and it is our job to show them that we can provide for them, that we're not going to stand around and beg for money, that we're going to go out into the world and help them ourselves. For this reason, we firmly stand by the moot in which we would prefer to be a prostitute, as first, we must exhaust everything in our capabilities to protect our children. Second, we can use this money to be able to help us get a better job in the future, such as a doctor, which we have the skill for. And third, there is nothing wrong with prostitution. Thank you. The first speaker of the negating team, Kaiden Chan. Clearly, the first speaker of the affirming team knows absolutely nothing about New Zealand's economy. Right now, businesses all around New Zealand are scrambling to find employees in both high-paying positions and low-paying positions. This means that you don't have to be as qualified as you would be for small and large businesses to be able to want to hire you in New Zealand. Prostitution is being portrayed by the Affirming team as this last option that's going to make you a lot of money. But the fact is, it isn't. There are plenty of career options out there in New Zealand that are extremely viable and can give you a steady source of income. They're not salary related and not commission related. And best of all, you don't have to sell your body. I am the first speaker of the Negating team, and we firmly do not believe that prostitution should be a preferred career for the 3 reasons today. It is not something that should be considered, as there are many other viable options within the New Zealand economy today. My second substantive point is that, is this really a good example to set for your child? And third, it is a dangerous work environment. I start with my first substantive point, in which there are 3 points. There are many other jobs. My second point under the substantive, they could be higher paying, and my third point is that it's not commission based. Now, I start with the first point. There are many other jobs in New Zealand in which we know you could work anywhere. You could have a very small amount of training and be able to make a minimum amount of salary, or perhaps even more, combined with government benefits for your child, which will be enough to pay for them, enough to feed them, shelter them, and look after them. Affirming team has portrayed this as an extreme scenario. It's a false dichotomy, essentially. They want to portray it to us like this is our last option, like we're already groveling at everyone's feet, and their child is sick with cancer, and prostitution is the only way that we're going to be able to save them. But the fact is, it's not. There are so many jobs out there within our economy. We need people to work, and this is a key opportunity for you to be able to take. These careers are going to be much more stable. They're not going to be based on commission. Prostitution relies on you. The amount of money you make relies on how many people you sleep with, which means you have to work extra hard and sell your body even more to be able to gain a just amount of money to be able to feed you and your child. However, in most careers, it is not based around a selling, especially for some office jobs you're going to be paid the same amount, essentially no matter what. This means that you're not going to have to be worried what if nobody wants to sleep with you today? Or what if there's not a lot of horny people out there? Because you're still going to be able to get that check at the end of the fortnight and know that you can protect your child from everything out there. I start now with my second substantive point. Is this a good example for your child? Now, the fact is, prostitution might not be illegal, but it is certainly, and even said by the Affirming team, to not be the most ideal career. The fact is, you're selling your body. It's not because you have nothing else to do. It's because you're choosing to do so. You're choosing an option that is not only more difficult, but less efficient. And would you want your child to become a prostitute when you're older? Because perhaps they're like, oh my gosh, mummy, I would love to become a prostitute just like you. It's my dream to be shagged by a 60-year-old man who doesn't care at all about me but will pay me a few $100s. This is not the example we want to be setting. We want to let them have a good education and find a proper, stable career. And another point about an example for your child, regarding your child, is what if it affects their social ability? There is a very high chance that people may find out about your career. Do you think other parents are going to want their children being friends with your child? The fact is, They wouldn't. Because it's a disgusting job in which you have to sell your body. I wouldn't want my child being with another child whose parents are a prostitute. That's just a fact. It's going to affect them socially in so many ways. What if they're embarrassed about what you do, about the work that surrounds you? It's disgusting, and you don't want that on your child, no matter what, because the affirming team tells us they want the best for our child, they want to protect our child, but you're not protecting them for the real world and the real consequences that comes up with raising your children as a prostitute. My third and final substantive point. It is a dangerous work environment. Although it may be legal, this is a very shady work. A very shady line of work. The fact is, even if you're part of a brothel and an official company, it's still very, very shady. There are many things that could go wrong. There's no one there to protect you. Do you really want to be associating and working with people that pay for sex? If you think about it, if they're willing to do that, and what if they don't have enough money, and then they've just had sex with you and they can't pay you? What's going to happen? Or perhaps they take advantage of you and knowingly rape you. These are all factors that the affirming team simply hasn't considered. It's not safe, and it's certainly not healthy, which brings me to a point underneath this substantive. There are many diseases out there that are transferred via sexual activity. These are things that you may get, and no matter how safe you are, the possibility is 100 times higher than if you were working in an office job or another stable career. What if you get sick? Then who's going to look after your child? You might have the money, possibly, but you're not going to have the time to look after your child. And these sorts of activities work around the evening, which means who's going to be at home looking after your child? Your family? Well, you cut connections with them. Your friends probably don't have any, considering you're a prostitute. There is no one there to look after your child. The affirming team tells us this narrative that we must be some savior angel parents that protect their child, but the fact is they haven't given a thought about the logistics of this sort of career. We firmly disagree with this assumption that prostitution is a preferred career, because the fact is, one, there are many other jobs right now that you could be able to take without the necessary degree or training. The second thing, it sets a bad example for your child and can negatively affect their social ability and how they are raised. My third substantive point was how it is dangerous to work in this sort of shady environment. We don't want our children to grow up in poverty. But the fact is that you don't need prostitution. There are other jobs, and there are other ways we can protect our children. Thank you, and we are proud to negate. Second speaker of the affirming team, Kaiden Chan. We must stress that on the affirming team, which we have stated already, that prostitution is an extremely easy job to do. It is not something that requires any training at all. The fact is, you may be able to get an office job, but are you going to be able to cope with it? Because it requires training, does it not? It requires information about what the company does and what not. These are things that the negating team has continued to not acknowledge. The fact is, anyone can be a prostitute. It's an easy source of income, and it is a way that we can protect our children. I would first like to start with rebuttal against the affirming first speaker. They tell us that within today's economy that there are plenty of other jobs, but the fact is it's really not that simple. Yes, they may be looking for jobs, and companies may need more employees, but that doesn't mean that they're going to hire anybody off the streets. Would the negating team really have it that a homeless person could walk into the Apple Genius Bar and be like, give me a job? It's not that simple. You can't just get a job because the generalized New Zealand economy requires employees for their companies. But prostitution is different. Anyone can do it at any time with no education and no training. All you have to do is do it. Now, the fact is, there are 3 main points of clash today. The first point of clash is this actually the best option career-wise? For Affirming to win, we need to be able to prove that prostitution is something that will be able to give us enough money to be able to support us and our child. But the negating team has to prove that not only is this not an easy option, but it is also an option that shouldn't even be considered. The fact is, we've won this point of clash for the simple reason. Anyone can do this sort of job. It doesn't require training. It doesn't require a degree. It requires your body, which everybody has. And the fact is, you can earn a lot of money from this. There are many people who are willing to pay absurdly high prices for these sorts of sexual activities. And the fact is, we need to be able to make a lot of money. It's not cheap relying on government benefits. And a small office job that doesn't require a degree certainly will not be able to pay for you and your child. This job, however, gives you much funding, and you can work as much as you like or as little as you like. Regarding our children and whether or not they will be safe, how come we can't ask a friend or something like that to help look after them? How come we can't work in hours in which they are flexible with our child's education? Perhaps we do it while they're at kindergarten. It's not just at night. People are horny year-round, 24/7. They don't just get horny at night. That's a fact, alright? We must be able, the negating team must be able to understand that this is a job you can do at any time. It is an easy job and a reliable source of income. For this reason, we firmly believe we've won the first point of clash. Now, the second point of clash must be the effects it sets for our children. Now, the negating team has told us that they're not going to have friends because their mother or father works as a prostitute. Will be isolated. It's going to negatively affect their social ability. But although this may be true, in today's society, how can we judge? Poverty is rampant in New Zealand especially. 1 in 5 children don't have breakfast. And I am not going to stand here, do nothing, try get a job while my child doesn't have anything to eat. I'm going to go out and I'm going to work as a prostitute in order to feed my children. This is a fact and it must not be ignored by the negating team. What parents are to judge? Were they college dropouts? Did they have no job and a single child to raise alone without a home, without food, without water, without shelter? They cannot judge, and they will not, because from our point of view, it is a strong man or woman who is doing anything it takes to protect their child and to serve their child's needs in terms of education, in terms of not even starving. That's a fact. No one is going to disrespect you and disrespect your children because of your career, because it really was the only option for you, and it was an easy option to be able to get money for you and your child. We firmly believe we have won this point of clash. Point of information, accepted. But would you not agree that there are other jobs? There are an almost infinite amount of jobs that you could take. Why does it have to be prostitution? Well, the simple fact is, yes, there are other jobs, but as we've already said from our first and by myself, this is an easy job. It is not a job that requires training, and it is not a job that will be able to streamline money into our bank accounts. My third point of clash is that this is a job in which there are no moral obligations. We want to the negating team wants us to believe that selling your body is immoral. They want to tell us that we shouldn't do anything to protect our child. But this is just wrong. Why would it be decriminalized in New Zealand if it wasn't completely a wrong thing to do? It should be a respective field of work. There are people who have these desires, and we're there to fulfill for them. It is not immoral in any way, and we know that we don't have a religion, we know that we don't have any sort of context in our background which would inhibit us morally from doing this kind of work. The fact is, it is not for other people to decide what we want to do with our bodies. It is for us to decide. And for me, I've decided that I will do anything to get money for my child, no matter the cost, because I want them not to be punished for my consequences. This is something that the negating team cannot ignore any longer. We firmly believe that being a prostitute is the preferred line of work. Thank you, Kaiden Chan, from First AF. Now, Kaiden Chan from second/third negating. We should probably first start with the fact that the affirming team completely ignored and strawmanned our third substantive point, which we are now streamlining to becoming extremely important. This is a dangerous line of work for you and for even your children. You don't know what's going to happen out there. You don't know if you're going to be kidnapped, if you're going to be raped, if you're going to be sexually assaulted. These are all things that are increasingly likely if you take this line of work. As a second speaker of the negating team, I'm going to present 3 points of clash today. The first point being, within our economy, is it or is it not preferred to be a prostitute, and are there other careers that are better suited for our situation? My second point of clash is how it will affect our child. My third point of clash is this a dangerous working environment, and what are the moral obligations that come with this job? Now, my first point of clash. There is so many jobs that you might be able to take instead of becoming a prostitute. The affirming team refuses to accept that there are any other jobs. They tell us, essentially, like there is nothing else they can do. But we know we have the skills to become a doctor. So why not possibly just take a minimum wage job? Maybe fry some patties. Anyone would rather do that than sell their body. The fact is, you only need to be making enough money where your child and yourself needs are satisfied. You have help from the government. It is enough to satisfy anything that is a necessary part of your survival. There are other jobs, there are office jobs that are possibly even higher paying, and the undisputable fact is these jobs are reliable. They're not relying on how many customers you may be able to attract. They're relying on you showing up to work, you doing it, and you're getting paid for it. That's a fact, and we must guarantee, as said even by the affirming team, our child's protection. Our child cannot starve. And the fact is, if you're working in this sort of prostitution, you don't know if you're going to be making up enough money every day. You're going to be scared every single day. What if there's no customers? That's an undisputable fact that the affirming team has ignored and strawmanned the entire debate. For this reason, we firmly believe on the negating team that we have won this point of clash, in which there are much better job applications out there within the New Zealand economy. Our second point of clash. Does this really set an example that is bad for our children? The answer? Yes. You can ask anybody. If you can ask anybody, and if you thought that they would leave their if they would leave their child with another child whose parent was a prostitute, I give you $100. Because the fact is, this is extremely rare. The affirming team talks about how you're going to be a single parent and you should probably be respected because you'll do anything for your child. But the fact is, and essentially builds the foundation of the negating team's entire point and substantive, is that there are other jobs. You're not going to be respected. You're going to be looking as a person who's cheap and a sellout, who doesn't think or doesn't want to put in the hard work to protect their children, who doesn't want to get a stable job to feed their children. They want the easy way, so they want to sell their bodies. And the fact is, it might be easy, but it's certainly not viable, and it's certainly not a long-term career. Your children are not going to have friends. Your children will be isolated once anybody finds out about our line of work. It is extremely degrading for you and your child. What are they going to do when they look up to you? They're not going to be, oh, my mother or father is a doctor. I want to be just like them. You really want your child to grow up wanting and wishing to be a prostitute? Is that the dream, and is that the example that the affirming team feeds to their children? It's disgusting, and that's a fact. For this reason, we firmly believe that we have won this point of clash and in the fact that it sets a horrible example for our children. Our third point of clash is the moral obligations behind this job, and is it a dangerous work environment? We talk about morals, and it's a difficult topic to cover during a debate because they are subjective. But the fact is that not a lot of people would willingly want to work as a prostitute if they had other jobs. And that's the situation we're in today. There are other jobs, so of course it wouldn't be good to sell out our body. Nobody, I assure you, nobody likes this sort of degrading work and chooses it because they enjoy it. They do it because it's their final options in perhaps countries that are in a much low socioeconomic status, in a place where finding a job is increasingly more difficult. But in New Zealand it's not. We're looking for employees at every single company. The fact is, you could be kidnapped, you could be raped, you could be assaulted. It is a shady line of work, and this fact cannot be ignored. Your child's safety is at risk because one day you might not show up at work. One day, someone might be mad that you didn't give them a discount or you didn't do a second hour, and they might shoot you in the head. They might take you to Saudi Arabia and sell you to a prince. That's a fact, and that's something that the affirming team has never thought to consider. We cannot allow our children to be under our protection when we're not even protecting ourselves. We don't want to be selling out our bodies when we can be doing other jobs that make more money, will have checks coming in at a stable outcome. For this reason, we believe we've won this point of clash, and we've won the debate overall, because the fact is, we've proven that there are other jobs out there. We've proven that this is not a good example for our children, and we've proven that there is nothing you can do to stop these sorts of shady behavior in this line of work. It may be legal, but it is certainly not optimal. And for this reason, we do not think being a prostitute is a preferred line of work when there are so many other things you can do to protect you, your child, and your entire futures. Thank you.